Good evening, everybody, and you're all very welcome to our webinar this evening on anxiety in children from 5 to 12 years with the ISPCC and Children's Otter, Katie O'Donoghue. I'm delighted to be joined here this evening by Siobhan Harvey and Niamh Clark from the ISPCC and by Katie as well. My name is Siobhan Kavanagh and I am the chair of the Education Support Centres of Ireland, and I'm delighted on behalf of all the education support centres around Ireland to welcome you here this evening, and we're delighted to be collaborating with Katie and with ISPCC. Just a few little logistics for you. We will send a PDF of the slides to everybody within the next week or so after the webinar. We are recording the webinar this evening as well, and if all goes well and with electricity and everything the way it is this evening and thunderstorms, if everything goes okay, a recording of that may be available on the website. Our Q&A is open and we welcome you to put questions in that as the evening goes on, and we will address them later on. And hopefully you have had a little bit of time to relax and detach a little bit from school. It's always amazing that teachers come in their numbers, in such numbers every evening to come to a variety of courses. And as we all know, particularly after COVID and with all of the issues and things that our young people have to deal with, that anxiety is an issue that we are experiencing or have to deal with every day in the classroom. So hopefully you gain some benefit and some resources or tips that will help you. So I will hand you over now to Siobhan Harvey. Thank you.
Great, thanks a million, Siobhan, and I'd just like to say thank you so much for having us here this afternoon. ISPCC are delighted to be collaborating with the ECSI and Katie on today's webinar. So my name is Siobhan Harvey and I'm the parenting lead with the ISPCC, and also joining me, as you mentioned, Siobhan, is my colleague Niamh Clark, the Community Engagement Manager, and our guest speaker who we're delighted to have with us, children's author Katie O'Donoghue. So just before I introduce Katie, I'm just going to tell everyone just a little bit about ISPCC and our services and programs that are available for children, young people and for families. So we provide a range of services, and we're probably best known for our Childline listening service, which is a 24/7 service available for children and young people up to the age of 18. And this service is accessible via online chat and also via phone. We also have our Childline therapeutic support service, which provides support to children, young people and their families. And we can meet with young people where they feel most comfortable, whether this is online, in school, a community centre. And we have this service in various locations around the country. One of our other programs is our Smart Moves program, and this is a schools transition program which aims to support the emotional resilience of children as they prepare to transition from primary school into secondary school. We also have our Shield, which is an anti-bullying program, and this aims to support organisations in their efforts to proactively manage bullying. Some of our newer programs and fit into our webinar here this afternoon is our digital mental health and wellbeing programs. And these are aimed at reducing anxiety for children and young people. We also have digital programs for parents and carers around managing their own anxiety while also supporting the child or young person in their life. Some parenting supports that we have, as we know, teachers also, have deal with parents as well on an ongoing basis. We have our parenting hub on the ISPCC, and this publishes lots of different articles in relation to parenting and parenting supports. We also have a support line that's available and open to parent carers and professionals. And this is a listening service whereby we have professional therapeutic support workers offering information, advice and emotional support. And this is open every day, Monday to Friday, from 9 o'clock to 1 o'clock. And that can be contacted on 01 522 4300. Now, that was a real whistle-stop tour of some of the overview of our services. So if you do want any more information or you'd like to learn more about them, you can log on to www.ispcc.ie. So now I am delighted to be able to introduce Katie O'Donoghue, who's with us here this evening. Katie is a child and young people's therapist with a background in fine art and design. She has a master's degree in Art Psychotherapy and is in the end stages of a health psychology PhD. She has experience working therapeutically in health, charity, research and educational sectors in Ireland and the UK. And she's the author of The Little Otter Who Tried and The Little Squirrel Who Worried. Katie is going to talk to you now about anxiety and how it affects us. She will focus on increasing your knowledge and help you to learn some coping skills to support the child that might be in your life within the classroom, leaving you with the toolkit of resources. So absolutely delighted to have you here today, Katie. So you're very welcome, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Siobhan. It's a pleasure to be here and to have so many attending. So to get started, our aims for this evening's webinar, as Siobhan said, what I really want you all to go away with is a better understanding of anxiety, how it affects us, the children in the classroom, learning a bit more about resilience, learning maybe how you can use my two children's books as a resource in the classroom, knowing when a child may need some further support, and taking away these coping skills that you can use maybe at home with family, yourself, and also the children in the classroom. So as teachers and my conversations with teachers, anxiety has definitely been recognised in the classroom since the return to schools and post-pandemic. So it's very much a current challenge for all teachers supporting the children in their care. In the last 3 years, the likelihood of young people having a mental health problem has increased by 50%, which is massive, but I do believe that is being evidenced in the classroom as well, very much witnessed by the numbers of children who are struggling. So to start really, what is anxiety? What is it that children are presenting with? It's sort of a bit more understanding about what is actually happening. So anxiety is the mind and body's reaction to a perceived stress or what is perceived as a dangerous or unfamiliar situation. It's a sense of uneasiness, distress, and in a sense, anxiety can actually be a positive thing. It can help keep us safe, it can help keep us aware, but for children, particularly who maybe don't have that understanding, it can feel far from normal and actually be incredibly distressing and scary. What are the things that make children anxious? So big life events like moving house, starting school, or returning to school. You might also kind of perceive a rise in anxiety when you sort of start the new school year in September. Death of a family friend, family member, illness or injury, school-related issues, exams particularly, bullying, and abuse or neglect. There's different types of anxiety. So this is just sort of general sort of touch on anxiety. Separation anxiety, something you might witness quite a bit in the classroom, especially when starting school for the younger ones. You might notice that there's quite a level of distress from younger children at the first time being separated from their parents, from their carers, and going into the classroom. Social anxiety, a particular one that was very much evidenced as we returned back into the routines of everyday classrooms, children having to be around their peers again and almost finding this overwhelming at times. COVID did also increase children's and our own sort of health anxiety, worrying about health. General anxiety, this is a term that's often used when there isn't always a reason or there isn't always an understanding for why somebody might be presenting as anxious. And then we have things like phobias, which also come under the remit of anxiety. Now, the fight, flight, freeze response. This is, I suppose, the physical aspect, the scientific aspect of what is actually happening in the body when anxiety is happening. And this is across the board, children, adults. So when, like we said, there is a perceived fear, the brain releases the hormone adrenaline into the nervous system, and this puts the body into flight or freeze. So fight, you might notice that maybe some children seem to get quite angry or could appear aggressive in the classroom. Flight, maybe children want to run away or they want to hide, don't want to enter the classroom. Freeze, children who, in a sense, almost maybe shut down, or they will respond or can't verbalize or communicate because of that overwhelming free sensation due to the anxiety. Now, anxiety in the body, it can cause many uncomfortable and scary symptoms for children, and likewise for ourselves. So it's actually quite good to be aware ourselves where we might be kind of commonly experience anxiety. So, for example, some people complain of feeling dizzy, their heart pounding, they might start panting, feeling they can't breathe properly. Common one is queasy tummy. Children might say they feel like they have butterflies, palms sweaty, and legs feel wobbly. They're just a few of the symptoms. Now, one of the exercises that I actually do with children, which can be quite helpful, is a little bit of an introduction. So in The Little Squirrel Who Worried, the squirrel meets the hedgehog, who, in child-friendly terms, explains to the squirrel what exactly anxiety is. So in a similar way of what we've just discussed. I would then, after reading to that part of the book, I would invite children to either, you can get these online, sort of an outline of a gingerbread man, or as I have a picture next, sort of an outline of one of the animals from the books if you want to do something a bit more soft touch, and ask the children to have a think about maybe a time that they felt worried. And choosing any colors they want, they can color in the different parts of their body that maybe they felt worry in. And how this exercise is helpful is it helps to express and sort of put those, I guess, those feelings into some sort of something tangible. So rather than holding it, it's something that is now outside of the body, and that they can realize it's something that's happened to them, not something that they are themselves. So as you can see in the next slide. Okay. This is an example of one of the children doing the exercise there, and you can see the different parts of the squirrel that they were talking about, their head, for example, and the legs. But it's just a nice little kind of gentle exercise to help children gain awareness of when they feel worried and where they feel it in their body. Okay, so when understanding, this is the CBT model of anxiety. So what causes anxiety? For example, a child in the situation, for the example would be starting school for the first time. Initial thoughts might be worried. Will I know anybody there? Will people like me? Feelings, feel scared, feel worried. Behavior, they might be upset. They might ask, Mom and Dad, can I maybe not go to school today? They might be crying. Physical reactions, maybe starting to feel upset in their tummy, and some of the other sort of physical reactions that we mentioned earlier. So as you can see, they are actually all interconnected in a way. And so what we're trying to do with regards to supporting anxiety and helping children to cope is to attend to the different aspects. So either thought challenging, helping to challenge those worrying thoughts. Behavior, helping to reassure but support to go ahead with whatever the action, the situation that they're in. Physical reactions, helping them to emotionally regulate again so that they're able to face a situation. Some signs to look out for that may be anxiety, so this might be quite helpful in the classroom. Yes, a lot of signs of anxiety can be quite evident, but there are some which might surprise you. So always worrying or expressing negative thoughts, okay? A child who's maybe finding it hard to concentrate. There can be a few different reasons for that, but it's something just to keep an eye on. You might hear from a parent that the child isn't sleeping very well, or they're waking a lot during the night, so they might be quite tired. A child who's irritable or angry, when we think back to fight response with anxiety. A child complaining of headaches or stomach aches, again, one of the physical reactions of anxiety. being tense or fidgety, and using the toilet often. So a child who maybe is needing to urinate or go to the bathroom frequently. And the reason behind that is because when the adrenaline is pumped into the bloodstream, actually the blood moves away from sort of the lesser muscles into the larger muscles, like the legs, the arms, to getting children ready to fight, flight, or freeze. So therefore the muscles weaken, for example, in the bladder sphincter, and that's why they might feel the need to urinate. A child not able to eat properly can be because of the butterflies in their stomach. A child who's crying. So just a little recap. Things to be aware of that are physical symptoms. Panic attacks. So that would be one of the more extreme aspects of anxiety, and would be when we would be very much saying that, you know, a child is needing support around their anxiety. A child complaining of their heart beating very fast. They're maybe evidently breathing very quickly, sweating, shaking, saying they feel sick. Some children say that they that they get sort of a dry sensation in their mouth, sweating, tense muscles, wobbly legs, again, sort of the irritable bowel syndrome, IBS, or, for example, feeling very hot. Okay. Thoughts and feelings. So children can often get sort of preoccupied by upsetting, scary, or negative thoughts. And often these thoughts and feelings can feel very overwhelming. They feel out of control, which in turn sort of impacts the anxiety. They can feel a sense of dread. They can be particularly sensitive and alert to noises, smells, or sights. And they might worry about being unable to cope with just the daily things like being their friendship groups, doing their homework, exams, worrying so much that it's difficult to sleep, concentrate. So how can we help children when they're anxious in that moment? It's easier said than done. So if a child is having a panic attack, they're in that moment in time, it's what we call the cognitive part of the brain, in a sense, goes offline. So there's no sort of reasoning or logic that can come into place when a child is having a panic attack. But what we can do is help them to co-regulate and help them emotionally regulate by being together with them. So if a child is having a panic attack or at the height of anxiety, we model sort of the regulation. So we breathe slowly, sit with them, breathe slowly and deeply, and sit near them, offering that sort of calm physical reassurance that you're nearby. You can tell them that you're there for them. You can ask them to think of a safe, relaxing place, or say, for example, think the safe person who's maybe mom. Ask them to think of that person. Maybe encourage them to do something that helps them feel calmer, maybe once they've moved out of a hyper state of anxiety. So if this particular child loves art, maybe they could do some quiet drawing for a few minutes. Or if they love, you know, a particular toy in the classroom or want to read, maybe just give them a few minutes to do that activity if it's something that helps them to feel calmer. So with anxiety, like I mentioned, if a child is in the height of an anxious episode, logic isn't going to come into play. So we can't teach them then and there, for example, you know, maybe for something like a deep breathing exercise or a distraction technique. These are things that we need to do when a child is calm, when their logical brain is online, and that we can get those skills, those coping skills, sort of ingrained into that long-term memory. And again, there are so many different types of strategies that there are many to choose from. And what you can do is support children to explore them. So, you know, no two children maybe are going to like the same type of technique. It's about empowering them to explore and choose what they like. So we're going to learn some of those types of strategies and coping skills shortly. But what I would say is, you know, if we can get children learning these coping skills, they're skills that they will have for life and something that they can revert back to, just like ourselves as adults. If we have our own coping skills, they're things that we do to support ourselves during challenging times. So we want to empower children. We want them to have that toolkit so that they can learn maybe how to, relax themselves or know what to do to distract themselves from worrying thoughts, giving them the ability to cope, really. So, and that in turn reduces their fear and anxiety. So, okay, like for example, the first exercise I mentioned about the gingerbread man or using the outline of the animal. We want children to understand what anxiety is. We want them to recognize when they're getting their own signs of anxiety, because sometimes for children, they might be feeling worried, but they haven't specifically got the thought in their head or an exact thought, but all of a sudden they're starting to feel the physical symptoms of anxiety. So it's amazing, even I suppose the workshops that I have done with children, from a very young age, children are able to tell you, I felt worried this time, and this is where I felt it in my body. So if we can get children understanding that anxiety is normal, we all have anxiety, these are where the places we can feel them in their body. And when we start to feel this way, there are things we can do to help ourselves before it escalates. So, we want to give children those activities that help them express themselves, help them feel less anxious. We want to help them learn activities that help them to relax. We're going to look at helping them maybe make a worry box in the classroom, and parents at home or even in the classroom, there can be a worry tree up on the wall to help children sort of work through their worries. We're going to learn some distraction techniques, and we're going to help them problem solve and challenge their thoughts, because actually we're going to touch on it later, but coping skills are a massive element as well about building resilience for children. Okay, so how can we talk to children about their worries? So reassurance is fantastic in a way that, it helps if a child is anxious for them to know they're listened to. And that would be the first step is listening to them. Then it's acknowledging what they're feeling. We might not necessarily agree with that at the time, but it is the acknowledging, so that a child feels that they're acknowledged, they're being listened to. It's normal to feel how they're feeling, and they have that space with the trusted adult, whether it's you as the teacher or at home. One thing I would say though is, for example, we might, and we all do it, and it comes from the best of places, but we might say, you'll be grand, go outside now, there's nothing to worry about, it's fine. That's coming from a good place, but all the child is hearing really is, okay, I'll go outside because I have to, but really I haven't felt validated, and I'm still feeling this way. So it can be a temporary solution, but long term, it hasn't given the child any, I suppose, tools or help them problem solve in any way. So inadvertently, it can reinforce the behavior. And Niamh, I might ask you to take over slides if that's okay, just because they're being quite slow. Thank you. So distraction techniques. This is just an example. There's many different types of distraction techniques. So this one is called the 5 senses. It's a very nice one for helping a child, rather than being up in their head with worried thoughts, it's about coming back to the body, grounding themselves. So the 5 senses, you ask a child to look around and five things they can see, 4 things they can touch, 2 things they can smell, 1 thing they can taste. And this is just a small little grounding exercise, but it's helpful to do when a child is anxious or if we are anxious ourselves. Another one can be using the alphabet. So if a child has a particular interest, it could be football, it could be different football players' names, it could be a love of animals, going through the alphabet and finding a name or an animal, A, B, C, D, and going along. So that again sort of distracts the child, brings them back to themselves, and takes away from the worrying thoughts. Slide, please. a worry jar. Now, this is a lovely activity to do in the classroom. It's very creative. So they can use a worry jar, or sometimes what I've done with children, if people don't have a jar, or there's elements about maybe health and safety, is using an envelope. So, collection of art materials, stickers, and I ask each child to decorate their envelope with all the things that make them happy, that make them feel safe, things that they love, and cover it, put their name on it, design it any way they like, but it's their special envelope. And then I invite them to, if they have any worries, they can write down their worries and pop them into the envelope to keep them away for safekeeping. And now these envelopes are contained, they're private for the children, and what they can do is bring them home then and share them with the carer or the parent in their life, and use worry time to look through the worries together. So what the jar does, in a way, it gives containment for the worries. It takes the child expresses it, they write it down, it becomes something tangible, it's no longer part of them, it's outside, it's gone into the container which holds the worry for them, and it also helps them feel less overwhelmed. Worry time at home with the parent then gives the opportunity to problem solve, to look at the worries. It also gives the opportunity for children to see, so that something they may have worried about, they put their worry in there a few days ago and they take it out now a few days later, and actually they're no longer worried about it anymore. It's a fantastic tool to help children understand that difficult feelings do pass. Worries don't always stay. Next slide, please. There are different types of relaxation techniques. Again, what I mentioned earlier is the fact that all children are different, just like ourselves. I mean, there's different apps out there. There's Headspace, there's Calm. A lot of the time I'd use YouTube. I mean, it's great for exploring. For example, a visualization would be someone with a very calm voice leading you, maybe with some background music, through a story in which you're visualizing different things that are meant to help you relax. Again, what I would say is, if you don't like the sound of the person's voice, don't bother listening to it. And the same goes for children. It's letting them pick and choose and explore what suits them. Progressive muscle relaxation. Again, it's a guided relaxation of each one of the muscles, either starting from the head down or from the toes up. I find this is particularly helpful with young boys, actually, and getting to sleep as well. So that can be a helpful one. Deep breathing exercises, there's many of them. What I would say is, any of these things, if you have maybe even just 10 minutes, something to start the day with in the class. When children are coming in, it's maybe hard to get them settled. There's a level of anxiety, excitement, chat, and what it can be a great little tool to have maybe 10 minutes of some sort of relaxation technique at the start of the class, or maybe midday after lunch, just to help children relax, ground themselves, and I guess, help them get that cognitive part of the brain back online so that they can engage in the learning again. Slide, please. So, thought challenging. Now, easier said than done, but it can be very helpful, particularly in a teaching role as well. If a child is coming up to you and saying, nobody likes me anymore, or I have no friends, these can be helpful questions to ask to help a child challenge their thoughts. So one of the nice questions to say is, now, if a friend said this about themselves, what would you say to them? That gets the child to think about the situation from a different perspective. And also, what they tend to find is, usually we're kinder to others than we are to ourselves. So it's a great little reflective question to help children think about what it is that they're saying about themselves. We're looking for evidence against a thought not being true. So, for example, we might say, when did you last have a thought that wasn't true? We have thousands of thoughts every day. Some are good, some are not so good. And what we are trying to do is help children sift through the facts that just because we think something doesn't mean it's true and doesn't mean it's real. And we ask them to think about a kinder way of thinking about themselves in the situation. and looking at facts or evidence that might make them think this isn't true. And we're asking them this first. We can maybe help prompt them, but what we want them to do is to give responses, to think about it, so that they're coming back to you and they're changing the thought to something a bit more kinder and a bit more real. Slide, please. Okay. Another nice little exercise to do in the classroom is all the things that help me feel safe exercise. What I like to do, I tend to do this one after the section in the book where there is a sort of a visualization and relaxation technique in the nest. But what I get children to do is draw the outline of a shield. And in it, depending on their age, they can draw, they can write, they can do one or the other, whichever they prefer. All the things, people, and places that make them feel safe. And this might be a nice thing to have on the wall. So, you know, if a child is struggling, that they can look at their shield on the wall and be reminded of all the things that make them feel safe. And having sometimes that visual cue can be really helpful for children. So we really want to, you know, there's a lot about, particularly with anxiety, we're talking about fears, we're talking about the scary things, but we also want to empower them. We want to give them feelings of safety and those tools so that they can feel empowered. Slide, please. We're going to touch a tiny bit on resilience as well today. So as I mentioned earlier, one of the aspects of a child's resilience is their inner resources. It's their learning, it's their coping skills, and resilience in a sense. I think we've all been very resilient over the past few years if we think about what we've all been through, but resilience can be thought of as our ability to bounce back or even grow in the face of pressures and threats. And considering what children have experienced over the past few years, it is evident that children are resilient and they just need a bit of extra support to help them with these challenges they're experiencing. Next slide, please. So children, they're asked to deal with many problems, ranging from adapting to a new classroom. They were asked to do online schooling. That was a massive adaptation for, I'm sure, yourselves as well as teachers. There might be bullying by peers or difficulties within the home. And sort of we add to that all the other uncertainties that life throws at us in this complex world. And what we want is for children to have the ability to thrive despite these challenges. And the good news is, in a way, that resilience skills can be learned, a bit like the anxiety sort of skills. They are all part of building a child's resilience. So we can help children to learn skills and develop resilience. Next slide, please. They can recover from setbacks and get back to living full and happy life. And resilience develops when children experience challenges and learn to deal with them positively. So like we mentioned, you know, these sort of anxious experiences or having difficult thoughts, that we're learning to problem solve, we're learning to challenge our thoughts. These are all ways that children develop resilience. And strong relationships are the foundation of a children's resilience. So, and as teachers, children spend nearly half of their day with you. So you are such special individuals who can support children and can help instill some of those life skills for them. Next slide, please. So the protective factors for resilience: family, the parent-carer relationship, a child's own inner resources, their coping skills. And this is where the school comes in, the community, the relationships and sense of belonging that children have, being part of their peer group, being within the school. It's so, so important. So it's one of the major pillars of protective factors for resilience. Next slide, please. So some of children's own resources, we're looking at their own secure attachment experience with their parent or caregiver, being maybe naturally more outgoing as an infant, good communication skills, sociability, a child who maybe likes to plan ahead or believes in their own sort of efficacy, humor, problem-solving skills, the experience of success and achievement, but I would also say the experience of sometimes failure and then learning from those experiences as well. Religious faith or a belief system, and their capacity to reflect on those situations. Maybe again, look at the problem solving, or be able to reflect on the difficult experiences and see what ways they might approach things differently in the future. Next slide, please. So experiences and encouragement within the classroom. Yes, there's a curriculum that's at the forefront, and the children are in the classroom to learn. The things that we can do is we can, focus on praising the effort. A child might be maybe not the best speller, or, but they might excel in another aspect, or they might be very kind, or very, a great sort of teammate in sport. And what we try to do is praise the effort, but also focus on children's strengths. So a lot of the time children will feel that, I'm not very good at this, and that means I'm no good at all. But whereas we're actually, trying to tell them, well, we can, with practice, we can get better at things, but we all have different strengths. So, reflection, conversation, problem solving, giving children opportunities to learn new skills. I mean, that's part of the classroom experience, which is wonderful, learning something new every day. And a space for creative expression, like we mentioned some of those activities, but sometimes just space to doodle or do something creative for children to help them express themselves and emotionally regulate. Next slide, please. So what can we do? We can model coping skills to our children. So if a child maybe approached you in the classroom and said, I'm feeling very worried today, we might say, oh, something that I like to do is, and maybe we might talk about the five senses, or I like to do some deep breathing. Maybe there'd be 1 or 2 minutes where you could just take some time to do that with a child. It could be talking about and naming our feelings. So if a child is upset, it can be validating in that and saying, I can see that you're very upset, and asking them questions about what is it they're feeling or what's happened. Helping children to identify and manage strong emotions. Again, when we name our feelings and help children to name the emotion that they're feeling, that's helping them to identify, and that's the start of helping them to manage those strong emotions. Clearly communicate with children, support and encourage children to try their best. So children develop resilience over time, and in a sense, as the adults in their lives, it's part of our role to really try and be patient and supportive while children are trying to figure out how they can best respond to those challenges. Slide, please. Problem solving. So problem solving skills help children face challenges, and they promote the positive mental health. Increasing sort of their understanding that we're all different, as I mentioned earlier, that people have different experiences, different thoughts and feelings. So you can see the little duckling on the screen here, and in little Otter, while she's learning to swim, she sees this tiny little duckling and she thinks, God, it's so easy for him. He just seems to glide along. And they have a conversation, and he's quite shocked that she perceives that it's being easy for him, and he tells her to look under the water. And she can see that his little feet are having to move very hard. So the message, and particularly under that page, is we never know how hard somebody is trying it underneath it all. And actually in a workshop, a 4-year-old took away that message, which was quite amazing, really. But it helps children understand that I suppose, particularly nowadays with social media, the pressures on children, there's this perception of perfection or things looking easy because they're immediate. And this, in a sense, also exacerbates anxiety, impacts resilience. So it's a nice message to help children understand that we are all dealing with our own struggles, and that's okay. So, and we want children to, when they encounter a challenge, to problem solve, think about what can they do in the situation themselves to help them feel better. Because the reality is, in the classroom, maybe there's 20, 30 children, and they might be upset about something, but they can't go to you straight away. So they have to think for those few minutes even, what can I do right now to maybe help myself feel better? Maybe I'll start doing some deep breaths, or I might start drawing while the teacher is giving the lesson, something just to help them regulate in that moment in time. We also want to come back to trying not to, when a child comes to us with a problem, it's very much, as adults, it's hard to see a child in distress. We want to jump in, let's fix it now. Okay, let's get this sorted. When we do that, sometimes we're taking away the opportunity for the child to learn and grow and develop those skills and resilience that we were talking about. So we want to help them problem solve. Ask them, what do you think you could do right now that would help you feel better? And it's amazing that children will come up with those answers. Yeah, sometimes they might need a prompt, but usually a child will think, oh, actually, I'll do this. Or if they're upset with someone, I might go talk to Aisling now, and I'll see if she'll be my friend again. And then they go away and do that, and great, that situation works. That action helped, or they'll come back and ask for further assistance. But we want to empower them to grow confident in facing those challenges. Slide, please. So another wonderful thing we can do, we mentioned sort of focusing on strengths and positive self-talk. So fears and worries are normal for everyone, but we want children to feel like they're building their confidence, to excel at what they're good at. And then not only that, but to keep trying and practicing with the things that they find difficult, because, we all find different aspects of learning difficult, and we have our strengths and we have our weaknesses. And it's about supporting children to try and become confident in both. So helping them to practice those coping skills, the problem solving, helping children to sort of stop that negative self-talk and comparing themselves to others. So children of this age, they begin, I suppose, their aspect of their identity is built by comparing themselves to their peers. So that is normal. Problems do arise though, and I suppose are exacerbated again with things like social media, or maybe thinking that, one particular friend is great at everything and I'm no good at this. And for example, the lesson that the toad teaches in the book is that he found it hard as a little tadpole because he couldn't hop and all he could do was swim, but he was a very fast swimmer. And now, as a fully grown toad, what he tells himself is, I might not be the best hopper, but this particular type of toad can run really fast compared to other toads. So it's more about helping children to negate that negative self-talk, sense of self, and to focus on and acknowledge their wonderful skills and strengths, because every child is special and every child has things that they're good at. Next slide, please. Self-esteem. Again, children need to know their strengths so they can feel more comfortable about their weaknesses. And I think that goes for us adults too. It's a way of, in a sense, compensating, because we know that we're not good at everything, but we can be very good at something, and that, builds aspects of self-esteem. What can we do? Easier said than done in the classroom, but there may be moments of time that you can give children a few sort of moments, just you and them, at different times of the day, showing them they're valued by maybe listening if they have a problem and giving them your time, helping them find things that they're good at and they enjoy, appreciating their efforts and persistence. A child might be trying really, really hard with their times tables and they're struggling, but each day maybe, they're putting their hand up and you notice that, and you praise them for that. Say, I really notice that you're trying, or you want to participate. And that's fantastic. Listening, building child self-compassion. So helping a child to build self-compassion helps children to deal with their disappointments, their failures, or their mistakes, and to be more kind to themselves. I think there's awful pressure on children nowadays to, as I said, be perfect or get everything right the first time. I know one of the things that I hear quite a bit is even children as young as 6 being incredibly anxious by having a spelling test. And not necessarily just the spelling test, but having to get 100% in their own minds, and that causes levels of anxiety. And yes, it's great for them to do their homework, to learn, to focus, and to achieve. But we want to help children understand that if they don't get things right the first time, or they make a mistake, what's important is acknowledge how they feel in that moment in time. Maybe they're disappointed, maybe they're sad, doing something to help themselves feel a bit better, and then problem solving for next time. Well, maybe I'll give an extra 5 minutes learning my spellings before the next test. Things like that. Next slide, please. So an optimistic outlook can be really helpful for children to help them deal with life's challenges, helping them challenge their thoughts. So we learned a bit about that a bit earlier, about thought challenging and those questions that we can ask children to help them reframe their thoughts to a more accurate and kinder thought. We can model thought challenging. For example, maybe we can say, give an example of, oh, when I was young and I thought this, but then I realized that wasn't very kind, so I decided to make my thought kinder by thinking this instead. Encourage choice and exploration. So when we're, as I said, looking at those different types of coping skills, encourage choice, encourage exploration. Each child is different, and some things they might gravitate to more than others. Again, encouraging play and creativity. They're great ways to help children express difficult thoughts and emotions that they might be holding or bottling up during the day, and to give them that space as well to help them regulate those emotions. Slide, please. So things to do, just as a little bit of a recap. And this would be more within the home, but providing that unconditional love and expressing it verbally, physically. So with regards to being in the classroom, what you can do is, express that you are their teacher, and if they have a problem, you are there, and that they know you are a safe person in the school if they have a difficulty or a challenge, that they can go to you. Having clear boundaries so that we don't belittle or reject the child if the child is very distressed. Model behavior that we would like the child to learn. Again, sort of, the thought challenging, helping them to maybe learn some of the deep breathing, or if they are feeling a certain type of emotion, helping them to be able to verbalize it, identify it, and communicate it. Recognizing their efforts and accomplishments. So, and that can be in many different ways, particularly in the school. So helping them to, you might notice that a child is really struggling in a certain way, and you can recognize, you can say, I can see you're trying really hard, and that can mean an awful lot to a child. So not just recognizing the 10 out of 10, but the efforts as well as the accomplishments. Encouraging children to try new things. So new things cause anxiety, but the more we try new things, the more confident we become in sort of negotiating those challenging experiences, or trying something new for the first time. Encouraging that positive self-talk, self-compassion when maybe things don't go our way or we make mistakes. Helping children understand that mistakes or failures can provide opportunities for new growth and new learning. Our problem solving, really important, a great skill for children to have. So when they encounter those challenges and they might not have an adult with them, they can think, okay, what can I do in this situation? And then if they need a bit of help, they can go to you, their teacher in the classroom. We want to encourage children to acknowledge, understand, name, and express their feelings, and encourage that communication, so that we can normalize the challenges in life, and to start this from a young age, because life is complex, it's not easy, and what we want to do is for children to feel confident in coming to the safe adults in their lives to discuss maybe the difficult feelings, emotions, or any challenges that they may be having. Next slide, please. So the journey of resilience, first of all, it's an incredibly personal journey. And, what works for one child or for you may not work for somebody else, but that's why there's a range of different skills that we can employ and help children explore. What I would say, if a child seems stuck or overwhelmed, particularly in the classroom, and you've, maybe parents at home are working on some of these coping skills and you've introduced some in the classroom as well, but they just seem really overwhelmed and are struggling, that getting some, I suppose, professional help from maybe the GP, or if there is a play therapist within the school, but turning to someone for guidance and having those conversations with the children's parents would be really important as well, just to let them know that, as a school, you're in a fantastic position to be one of the pillars of support regarding resilience, but sometimes we do need to get professional outside help as well. Next slide, please. These are just some book resources that can be quite handy to have in your little library in the classroom. So as mentioned, I have The Little Squirrel Who Worried, and that story focuses on psychoeducation of anxiety. It goes through distraction techniques, worry jar, relaxation techniques, and thought challenging, and it's just in a very child-friendly way. And I know that other teachers have brought it into the classroom and read sections at a time to support maybe children who, the class as a whole, but also one-on-one with children who might be finding the classroom environment quite challenging. And then The Little Otter Who Tried as well is a book that sort of gives messages of support, looking at mistakes, encouraging positive self-talk, coping skills, and self-esteem for children. And then The Huge Bag of Worries is a great resource as well to help children with their worries and anxieties. So thank you very much for everybody for all their time and for listening. What I hope is that you now will have more of an understanding of what anxiety is, that there might be some tools that you can bring into the classroom, that there are things that you can be on the lookout for, so that you can understand maybe when a child might need some more support, or conversations with parents or other professionals might need to happen. But it's been a pleasure, and thank you very much for your time.
Thanks a million, Katie. That was a fantastic session and full of loads of tips and tools that could be used in the classroom, I'm sure. We're very aware in the ISPCC from our work with young people on the front line that anxiety is on the increase, and having some level of knowledge about how you can start to begin to address that is so important. And, as everybody here today knows, that every interaction is an intervention. So, I hope this webinar has really helped the teachers that have attended here today to be able to start that conversation with young people, or to be able to put some of those tips and tools in place. So thank you. I'd like to remind everybody here today that there's a number of supports available from the ISPCC, and one that I'd like to point out there would be our digital mental health programs. So that's our Supporting an Anxious Child digital program, and these are guided self-care programs that you can recommend to parents or carers, or alternatively the school yourselves can refer a child in. And the website there, Space from Anxiety at ispcc.ie. And we also have available our Smart Move School Transition Programme, which is it's based on wellbeing. And again, if you'd like further information on that, it's smartmoves at ispcc.ie. So there's a number of questions here for you today, Katie. They're flying in, so I don't know if we'll get through them all today, but we'll begin if that's okay. We had, sorry, I'll start at the beginning. So any suggestions for helping a child who has become very withdrawn in school, reluctant to take part in a group activities, and child says all's okay, and the parent reports some issues with behaviour, not responding to boundaries at home, and no issues with behaviour at school.
Okay, so no issues with behaviour at school. It's interesting.
Yeah.
I suppose the first thing that stands out to me is the whole going somewhere unknown, when it's activities and maybe they're doing something new, but also it's looking at kind of the social aspect with peers, and maybe that's something that's could be causing a level of anxiety. So I don't know if could there be some difficulties with friendships with the peer group, or if there is an aspect of, I'm wondering what type of groups or what activities might be happening. Is there a sense of that they feel that something that they're not quite good at, and there might be a confidence issue there. I think if you yourself, Alan, you have a good rapport and relationship with the child, that maybe taking a few minutes to, rather than just saying, is everything okay, saying, I'm wondering, or I've noticed that when it comes to group activities, that maybe you stand back. I'm wondering, is there something that's difficult about this particular activity for you, or something that you don't like about it? Maybe just opening it up a tiny bit more rather than asking, is everything okay? Because it sounds like maybe there could be some self-esteem issues there if they're standing back, and maybe there's fear of judgment from the peers if they're engaging in this particular activity. So maybe something to boost self-esteem and confidence might be appropriate here, but I think it needs a bit more exploring.
Okay, thanks, Katie. The next question is, my 7-year-old son presents with social anxiety, especially when it comes to attendance at birthday parties, especially those in play centres. Have you any advice?
I wonder, is it anxiety on being separated from you, or is mum there with the child going in? So there can be a number of things. So it could be the separation anxiety that's coming into play there, or it could be about going into this sort of unknown. What I would say is maybe we could talk about, for example, the problem solving. So having a conversation with the child about what would make you feel better about doing this. And maybe the child might need some prompts, but for example, it could be, helping them to realize, well, actually, they will know a certain amount of people there, or mum is in the play therapy center if you need me, or, it's about having these conversations to help children feel empowered, so that before they go in, maybe they've been there before. So encouraging them to say, well, you've been to this space before, or if they haven't, maybe you can look at pictures online together. Think about, do they know people who are there, that they will, because it could be a fact that they're worried about not knowing anybody. But having kind of a conversation, asking questions, and asking them, and most importantly, what do you feel would help? Because often what we think would help is the complete opposite to what a child would think is going to help them. And we can often, as adults as well, because we know our children are worried, but we don't often know what exactly is making them worried. So we might, jump 10 steps ahead and we've solved everything. And actually, it would have been something very small, like, oh, I just want to bring Teddy with me and I'm fine now. So it's about asking them what do they think would help. And that would be a great place to start.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks, Katie. Next one in, how would you go about informing a parent of a child who is very anxious when on a class tour? In school, they show no signs of anxiety, but when they're in unfamiliar settings, they show a number of symptoms to the point of wanting to go home regardless of support. I'm unsure if the parents are aware of this, but I don't want them to feel as if I'm blindsiding them with this information. Yeah. So how do you make that approach?
Okay. What I would say is, I think the fact that you've noticed that, it's fantastic. So you already, as a trusted adult in this child's life, you've picked up on, actually, it's quite something very specific. And I think that's what I was reading your comment earlier. So it's class tours, usually, like we said, excitement and anxiety can feel very similar, but a major challenge for any child is going somewhere that's sort of into the unknown, a new place. It can be helpful. I think it would be helpful to have a conversation with the parents. It's not in a way blindsiding. I know that you don't want to maybe feel that you're burdening the parents, but there are things that the parents can do and you can do together to make the experience and the transition to maybe going onto the bus or going to this new place, so that the child can feel more empowered. So for example, say if they were going to Dublin Zoo, it could be, the fact that the parents know, and you could do it in the classroom even, is that you might all do an activity about drawing the different animals, and you might show them some actual pictures of the zoo so that they can start to get a visual. Or we might even look at the map of, this is how where our bus is going to travel. Sort of giving your children information, it's empowering them. And then with regards to something the parent could do at home, a nice little exercise for any parent is, for a child who's worried, you can draw a little heart on the child's hand, and likewise the child can draw a heart on yours. So it's just something very small, but it helps pull on that sort of secure attachment that helps children have that resilience with, and they're getting that from parent, carer, that they can look or touch the heart anytime they feel a bit worried, and it just gives them that tiny little bit of a boost. That's just for an example. But between both you having kind of witnessed this and, you know, picked it up, and parents knowing that this is something they could support their child with, and even again asking questions to the child saying, what would help you make you feel more safe and comfortable going on a school tour? They might have ideas themselves too. So I think it's opening up that conversation could be really helpful for that child.
Fantastic, Katie. Thank you. Are we okay with time? Are you okay for another question there? Are you ready? Yeah. Okay. Any suggestion or further advice for 11-year-old girl with high functioning ASD? She mixes adequately in the classroom activities, but keeps to herself in the playground despite years of encouragement, intervention, and group work.
I mean, I suppose ASD, it's a spectrum. It sounds like she's very high functioning, and the fact that she mixes adequately in the classroom, that's all wonderful. I think for children, you know, they're especially on the spectrum, that would take quite a lot of her inner resources to do that mixing. And maybe she's using the sort of, I guess, the play space that's outside of something with structure, because a lot of children on the spectrum like that structure, and when the structure is that not there, she might be using that space to just help her emotionally regulate. What I could say is, maybe if there is a possibility, maybe if you could bring in some structured play or a specific activity that's in the playtime, that might help her then to, you know, engage with her peers in that space. But it sounds like she's either using it for just to help her regulate, or she might need that encouragement and structure with, so that she can almost visualize it or know what she's doing in a way, to build up those relationships with peers in the play space.
Okay. I'm just very conscious of time, so we just do one more question, Katie, and then we might hand back over. So a girl in 6th class is extremely anxious about starting secondary school. She makes herself physically sick at the thought of it. Her mom is very worried and doesn't know what to do. She's fine at school and she doesn't show her anxiety to us, her teachers, but at home it's a different story. She refuses to go out to try a day at secondary school. She's been vomiting that morning, so her mom has kept her home. So on the surface, she looks like very happy and she has friends at school. Is there anything we can do before school ends?
Okay. So it sounds like she's coping quite well in school, which is great. That's really positive, and she obviously feels safe and supported in school. It sounds like a conversation with mum might be helpful. I guess what I'm hearing is part of the anxiety cycle, which we didn't touch on specifically, but that when we help, so avoidance, for example, helps kind of perpetuate the continuous cycle of anxiety. So she's vomiting because, like we mentioned, the upset stomach due to anxiety, learning some skills to help her kind of ground herself, the deep breathing, muscle relaxation progression to help her prevent her from getting to the stage of vomiting could be very helpful for this child. Mum, maybe learning them in the classroom, bringing them home, supporting the parent to learn those sort of ways to help her cope. But what I would also say is that mum keeping her home probably isn't helpful overall, because it just is giving, even unconsciously, it's like, for us adults, we want to take our child away from the thing that's causing the distress, but the more we keep them away, the higher the distress becomes. So it's quite a bit of a battle in a way, what I would be encouraging mum to ask her daughter is, what would help you get to school? We have to go to school today, so it's not a case of we will avoid it. It's something that has to be done. I acknowledge you're feeling this way. What resources can we do? What can help you feel better? And then if it could be moved on to the point that she is coming back into school, prepping for secondary, I think definitely, even if she won't get out of the car, driving past the new secondary school, few times consistently, day after day, just stepping outside of the car, standing at the school gates, and this sort of gradual sort of progression of moving towards the classroom. Some children need that because what it does is it helps the height of the anxiety. It's what we call the anxiety curve. It helps it to start dipping down. So instead of it being a brand new experience each time, where the level of threat and the fear is at the highest, we're bringing it down, and we're it's called graded exposure. So something like that might be quite helpful for that child.
Okay. Katie, thank you so much. Yeah.
Do you mind if I just make a suggestion there, just in relation to post-primary school, that even to contact the school and see if they can arrange maybe a visit without all the other students there, just to increase their familiarity with it, so that it's one less anxious time for them. But also a lot of schools would have camps for students, leading up to it, so they can make some friends before everyone would come back. So it might be just a good idea to kind of check in with the post-primary school as well. Sorry, Niamh.
No, not at all. Thank you very much. Well, that's a good insight there. So we'll hand back over. Just want to say thank you very much to Katie and to Siobhan herself and everybody at the ESCI for having us here this evening. It's been an absolute pleasure. And we didn't get through all the questions, but we will try to respond to them after the webinar. But if you would like any further assistance, please do not hesitate to contact us at ispcc.ie. Thanks a million.
Great, thank you very much, and thank you to all of you for the information in the webinar, which, as you can see from the comments that people are putting in there, that people found really useful and really interesting. And actually, I think it was you, Niamh, that said every interaction is an intervention, and I think that's lovely, because sometimes we're a little hard on ourselves and not maybe always been able to do the everything to the extent we would like to, but every time you interact with a young person, you are helping. Just on that note, I would like to mention as well, it's really important, if we're going to be minding other people, that we mind ourselves also within that. And teachers are being pulled, every which way in the classroom every day. And we know the teachers, try their best to reach as many people on many different levels every day. But you need to look after yourself, and you need to make sure that you're, giving from a full cup and not an empty one. So just a little reminder as well about the employee assistance scheme from Spectrum Life, that is available to all school staff. It's wonderful. There's, apart from the counselling that's available in that, there's a digital gym. You can do yoga and Pilates and mindfulness, and there's lots of resources there. And I think if you did anything as well just for yourself this evening, to explore that if you haven't already. Can I just say, Katie, that was fabulous. And I think also, if you were going to get somebody with a lovely voice to be doing a mindfulness piece as well, it would definitely be yours. It was both informative and very easy and nice to listen to as well. But also to Niamh and Siobhan, from everyone, a thank you for all of the work the ISPCC do as well. In schools, we would be lost without all those additional resources that charities give to schools, and the expertise and the time that you put into it. It's really important that we feel supported, and you do that. And thank you. So look, everybody, thank you very much. We're delighted you joined us. I'm sure you will be hearing lots more from the ISPCC as well. And ourselves. Can I just recommend also, there are a wealth of courses that are available through the Education Support Centre network as well, and you can view all of those courses on the website. It'll show you the courses all across Ireland, and obviously if it's an online course, you can attend a course in Donegal or Kerry or Tralee or wherever, Dublin, any evening. So thank you very much. Have a nice evening, look after yourselves, and a sincere thank you to Siobhan, Niamh and Katie for a very informative and useful webinar. Thank you, everybody. Good evening.
Thank you.